So today's last panel is a demonstration of true regional collaboration, and the discussion will be led by Ann Edmonds, the Alliance Workforce Team Manager. Ann serves as Regional Vice President for the Chicago, Wisconsin, Minnesota Metro Region. She leads all aspects of the operation of Manpower's commercial staffing business in the greater Chicago region, as well as Wisconsin and Minnesota. Her duties include strategy development and implementation, employee selection, development and retention, sales and service execution, and client satisfaction retention. Ann is also responsible for the proper alignment and prioritization of the region's activities to ensure the attainment of Manpower's visions, goals, and objectives. Ann and I have worked together now for many years, going back to the days when the Alliance was headquartered at the Chicagoland Chamber, and then Ann came with us as we incorporated as a 501c3. We are, so privileged and grateful for your leadership, and really excited about what you're going to hear today in terms of having the workforce leaders from the 3 sub-regions coming together and working on an initiative that I know you're going to be happy to hear about. So with that, Ann.
Well, thank you very much, Kelly. It's really a pleasure today to have such an outstanding panel with us. I have a chance in my role to be able to view a lot of businesses and what's happening in the world of work today. And one of the big issues that occurs is that companies and academia and government have a problem working together to get to a solution to find talent. And our excellent panel, from my observations, is one of the best groups in the country. They're very innovative. They've done some tremendously creative things. And I'm really looking forward to hearing about their compelling journey and award-winning initiative. So I'd like to introduce Karen Norrington-Reeves, President and CEO of the Chicago Cook Workforce Partnership. And Karen, if you could tell us just a little bit about your background, that would be great.
Sure. Good afternoon, everybody. Thank you for the few who've hung in there with us. So we won't disappoint. I'm Karen Norrington-Reeves. I oversee the Chicago Cook Workforce Partnership. We are the nation's largest workforce system. We have the city of Chicago as well as Cook County. I am an attorney by training, I guess a lapsed lawyer, as they say. I also have a background in early childhood education, and I actually been the founding CEO of the Chicago Cook Workforce Partnership. And before that, I was running workforce programs both on the county and before that with the state.
Great. Thank you, Karen. Linda Woloshansky, President and CEO of the Center of Workforce Innovation, I believe, in Indiana, correct?
Thank you, Ann, and I too thank colleagues who stuck with us today and those from Indiana that are still here. I appreciate it. My background is running workforce boards for a number of years. I have a lot of focus on education, economic development, and workforce development. It is my kind of passion. It has been a passion for a long time. I represent a 7-county region in Northwest Indiana, and feel very fortunate to be working with my esteemed colleagues here.
I'd like to introduce Earl Buford. If anyone's from Milwaukee, they know Earl. I told him that today, just as we were standing out there. Earl is President and CEO of Employ Milwaukee. So, Earl, would you tell us a little bit about yourself?
Yeah, thank you, Ann. First of all, again, like everyone else has said, thank you for hanging in there. And you waited for the best, so it's going to be worth your while. It's a lot of fun, a lot of exciting things we're going to talk about today. I'm the president and CEO of Employ Milwaukee, which is the largest workforce board in the state of Wisconsin, located in Milwaukee County. My background was in education. I previously worked for the workforce board about 20 years ago in youth programs, and I left about 1998 to run an organization called Wisconsin Regional Training Partnership, which is one of the nation's oldest and first intermediaries in that whole market of intermediaries. And the Mayor Tom Baer, persuaded me to come back. Actually, he said, "Come back and run the damn workforce board." Direct quote. and stop being an agitator to the system. So it's been 4 years now, and just really exciting the work we're doing in Milwaukee. But what I'm really excited about is work we're doing together collectively throughout the Midwest.
Great. They've had, as I said, a very compelling journey, and it's a journey that's been an award-winning journey. I find listening and looking at the presentation that they put together that you'll really take some very huge nuggets out of how to be collaborative and how to get things done. So I'm going to turn it over to Earl, who will start the presentation and talk through how you've collaboratively made a difference.
All right. I'm going to ask Tracy to go back one slide just for the map. So Midwest Urban Strategies is a collection of now 12 workforce development boards throughout the Midwest, or also known as Department of Labor Region 5. So if you look at the map, you have an idea of who's involved, but I will try to name off all 12. This is I always start west to east because it's easier for me that way. So Kansas City and St. Louis in Missouri. We just added Wichita, Kansas. Excuse me. Minneapolis, Chicago. I'm sure I missed something somewhere. Milwaukee, Detroit, and Gary in Indianapolis, and the 3 C's of Ohio: Columbus, Cleveland, and Cincinnati. Who did I miss?
Did you get St. Louis?
I got St. Louis right away. It's always easy first start off with. So you get the idea. And the idea behind this was really, as workforce development boards, as urban workforce boards, that's a key thing. It's urban boards throughout the Midwest coming together to create a community of practice. That's how it all started. We were all on the onset of WIOA, for those who understand the Workforce Innovation Opportunities Act, the law that governs our world, although we add a lot of other things to that world. We were all on the onset of that around 2014, and a lot of other things were going on in our respective communities, whether there were our turmoil in Ferguson and Detroit and some in Milwaukee as well. And so we needed a collective body of friends and colleagues and practitioners to bounce ideas off of. So that's how it started. It started, I think at the time it was 4 cities, and now it's grown to 12. So we're going to run slides. I'm not going to walk you through the slides because I want you out here before 5 o'clock. But you can follow that. We can also have the presentation sent out to you. But just to give you the basic ideas of where it started. And so when about 2.5 years ago, we had our first conference call as a group and decided we liked each other, which was nice. But what we found out more than anything else was, really the implementation of WIOA was so many tentacles to it. The federal government wasn't even ready for it, let alone states. And I think the local boards were ahead of the states in the Department of Labor in most cases. So the idea was community practice, but what we found is anytime you have scalable partnerships coming together, that funders like that. And so we'll get more into some of the funding vehicles that come together on the public discretionary side, but also on the philanthropic and corporate side as well. But the important piece is, how do you communicate best practices, goodwill, strong programs? And so today what we're hoping to do is kind of just walk you through what's developed, where we're at now, and then turn it over to each of us individually and let you know what we're doing in our cities respectively, and then how it's all coming together collectively, if that makes any sense at all. Vision-wise, as we're flying through the screens, you get the idea that this is the first of its kind, to our understanding. Well, there's lots of collaboratives around the country, a lot of associations, lots of collaboratives. But again, this is the first workforce development-led, urban-focused collaboration. And so one thing that came to mind from a resource standpoint, if those who were around for the ARA days of the Obama administration, a lot of the grants that came out, the various training grants and things that came out, they were going to a lot of the same groups. And a lot of those groups are my friends, so I'm not going to speak ill. But Jobs for the Future, National Fund, La Raza, all those groups were accumulating a lot of those grants. And what was interesting was, while as workforce boards we were mandatory partners, just sign off on it, we weren't really involved at a large level. So a lot of times the grants were awarded, and then they come back to say, will you work with us now, or will you sign off from this and get out of our way? And as the recognized public workforce system, that's a little hard to swallow for us. And it's not coordinated, it's not connected. And so again, by coming together through this community of practice and this partnership, we now have a way to really look at how to strengthen, leverage, and scale the public workforce system throughout the Midwest. So with that, our impact to date from a funding standpoint, so we're now responsible for 3 major Department of Labor discretionary grants. American Apprenticeship, which is the numbers on the board, but that includes 3 of the partners, Milwaukee, St. Louis, Detroit. And then there's the Tech Hire Initiative. Again, you see the numbers to train, which is St. Louis, Milwaukee, and Cincinnati. And then for America's Promise, more of us have come together. I believe 8 of the 12 cities are partnering on America's Promise to train more than almost 1,500 individuals and really upgrading pathways into middle skill jobs and good paying family supporting jobs. So really excited about those opportunities, but we've also received other philanthropic support and infrastructure support. One of the things I'm really excited about, so we as a group, we have a monthly phone call, and again, the early stages of our collaboration, we have a lot of what I call speaker meetings. Get just your phone out, hit speaker, and go from there, which can be tough. So we were fortunate recently to get an upgrade grant to connect us all technologically. So we're excited to now have more FaceTime technologically as a group to really work out some of the strong initiatives that we're working on. And we also as a group meet twice a year. So we were just in Cincinnati last week. Thanks for our host city there. And we will be in Minneapolis in spring and Kansas City, which I haven't told Karen yet, in Kansas City next fall. So a lot of proximity, a lot of time together, a lot of work, a lot of goodwill. And one of our next big initiatives, aside from the community practice and the resource development, is developing our relationships. So we really are going to be really fortunate to start to look at how our local partners can be expanded regionally. So whether it's development of industry advisory boards across regions, or whether it's just looking at best practices. We're just in a meeting earlier on transportation logistics. What can we do from a regional standpoint on that footprint? So again, these are all things that we do in our local areas, but to really go to scale, and that's the ever elusive thing at Workforce, is scale. I think we have an opportunity to finally talk about what scale looks like, how to move people and companies to really connect at a large level. In Wisconsin right now, we're dealing with a little phenomenon called Foxconn, and right now we're talking about 23,000 jobs across construction and manufacturing. Let's be honest, Milwaukee and greater Wisconsin can't fulfill that. So we're going to need our regional partners to really make that work. And while the governor will never say that publicly, we all know that. So that's, again, for me, from an infrastructure standpoint, I couldn't be more excited to have a partnership linkage to fulfill the needs of our local economy and our local employers.
Thank you, Earl.
So what I would like to do is first thank Kelly and Ann for having us serve on this panel and allowing us to tell the story, and Earl, of course, for his leadership in organizing the Midwest Urban Strategies. I said out of all the things that I've done over my career that has been collaborative, this is the time where the initiative is really collaborative, and it is very powerful and has resulted in direct benefits to, I think, everyone, certainly to our area, right from the get-go, not only from the federal grant standpoint, but just the community of practice and having an opportunity to learn from each other. So it has been outstanding. On the slide you can see where Northwest Indiana is, and we support the Northwest Indiana Workforce Board, which is the workforce board for the 7 counties of Northwest Indiana. Rooted in employer demand, we're really looking at how the workforce can develop to be self-sustainable and have a great quality of life. We really are in a prime position, I think, in Northwest Indiana because we're, right in the hub of 4 U.S. interstates, a lot of highways, the international port. We also have the Gary-Chicago International Airport, plus other airports. We can drive to about 80% of the population in 24 hours or so, and I must admit, that's not a drive I really like to have. Years ago, I drove to Marco Island and Naples in 24 hours, and I won't be ever doing that again because that was quite a haul. But you can get there in 24 hours. So we really boost the sector strategies. We focus on the sector strategies, manufacturing, logistics, healthcare, and retail as our primary strategies. And, essentially when we first started out working with employers, and that started in 2000, really the employer engagement and what do employers need in order to be productive and to be strong, and how to support the economic development of strategies of Northwest Indiana. Those beginning days were really focused on more transactional work and working one-on-one with employers. It moved to more relationship based, and now into more of a consortium based effort, because we can get to a lot more employers at any given time when we've got them clustered together, and they are all then sharing their ideas, not only with us, but with each other in terms of their skill set needs. And from that, some very interesting things actually occur. So we have a manufacturing consortium, Connexus, which is a statewide initiative in Indiana that focuses on logistics, has a workforce committee, and so we both work on, partner, and share with folks on that particular committee. A healthcare consortium, which has started. There was one in Northwest Indiana. It somewhat fizzled, and we stepped in and have taken that over, and it is really starting to blossom now, focused on different ideas that are needed in terms of skill training, but also different ways they could help each other in the industry, which is pretty exciting, including, possibly taking a look at pools of employees that they can draw from and share from in those areas where it is hard to recruit. And last but not least, our retail strategy, which certainly was in play, but as a result of a grant from Walmart and the Chicago Cook Partnership, certainly has helped launch that, including having a very interesting retail training center at the largest mall in Northwest Indiana, the South Lake Mall, where they've donated space and have allowed us to do all of the training right there on site, which allows individuals not only to learn the skill sets they need, but to practice them on the job, so to speak, in their retail connections. So that has just been fabulous. The second piece that is really important to us in Northwest Indiana, because of our geographic size and somewhat some of our disparity, because we're a community of urban, but we also have a lot of suburban and a lot of rural communities. And so what has become really important in order for our employers to get the scale of the potential talent and for us to really see traction in the development of the workforce pool is to align the pipeline. And as you can see there, we have kind of a multifaceted grassroots initiative that started 6 years ago as we brought in and invited individuals from the K through 12 system, the public corporations, the universities, economic development, employers, and labor leaders and workforce to develop a plan about what was really needed to focus on the jobs of today and tomorrow. And this initiative is called Ready. It is, as I said, a grassroots initiative. It has really focused on college and career readiness, which clearly is, key to everything that we are all doing. And with us today, we have Dr. Carmen Palilio, who's also one of the co-chairs of the Education Committee and has been just critical. We have 29 of the 36 public school corporations that are participating in this initiative. And they've done so voluntarily. I always say Ready is not encumbered by funding whatsoever. It really is an effort of love and just of will by the folks that are participating. And the college and career readiness focus has really resulted in some outstanding outcomes that we've tracked over the last couple of years, including increasing graduations rates, reducing remediation needs, persistence rates at the colleges, and has really resulted in a connection with the employer community, who essentially were initially responsible for the Ready initiative, as they kept saying that the pipeline needed to be developed. They didn't have the pipeline, and essentially the schools that said there were no jobs. And lo and behold, how surprising it was for both parties to see that they ultimately could work together and could benefit from this kind of relationship. It has been phenomenal. And the third piece of our pillars, I guess we call them, and we talk about these more than we do about programs, because if you don't have the right infrastructure in place, you don't have the right foundation, a single program is not going to resolve your workforce issue. And so that was first and foremost incredibly important to us, and that's where we've been putting a lot of our energies the last number of years. So the last piece relates to the development of the pipeline. And so, we also have kind of 4 pieces in terms of that development. What we found out is that the foundational skills of the folks in Northwest Indiana were really lacking, and I hesitate to even share how many folks don't have a high school diploma and have literacy issues. But what has happened is that there has been an incredible movement on the adult basic education line of work, where there are now 20 providers also collaborating and working together, not only to help people get their high school diploma that have dropped out of school, starting from ages 16, unfortunately, up to the 50 and 60-year-old individual who still wants to be employed. But it focuses on both remediation and basic skill enhancement, and clearly connects the folks that are in these different programs to focus on credentials and continuing their education so that they can see the development of a pipeline for their own futures related to careers. The second piece is related to career pathways and career advising. And what we're seeing, once again, across the board, a focus on helping people understand what those career pathways are. And through numerous conversations, I think, amongst all of our colleagues, we can understand that unless people have an understanding of what a career pathway is, what are the occupations within that pathway, what kind of transferable skills they might develop to move to a different pathway, there is a kind of lack of excitement about different jobs and different career opportunities. And we have been, attacking that through the work of career coaches and career facilitators and career online efforts that, once again, cut across all the programs, whether it's adult education, it's the One Stop Career Center. We see much of this occurring in our post-secondary institutions. And so we are starting to see that equal kind of playing field in all those areas to really, make a difference. Employer readiness is another one of those pillars, because without understanding what employers really need and having that connection with them, this doesn't seem like a very genuine kind of strategy. So what has now happened with all those employers that are involved in these consortiums and want to get engaged, they are now engaging both the job seekers, the students, the faculty, the staff, everyone that's working, the teachers, the counselors. They are engaging all of those folks to help them really understand what these jobs are all about. And they do so in a number of ways, including providing tours, doing panels, coming to one-stop career centers, to colleges. And at the one-stop centers, they actually come in every week and do on-site discussions with the individuals that are seeking employment. And we also have resulted in an weekly newsletter. What's the hot job? What's the hot information that goes out to all the partners and all the providers to keep them connected and to help them understand what's occurring? And the last piece is integrated training. And clearly, when we also talk about integrated training, we're thinking about the work and learn concept, which is so critical to folks, once again, really developing both not only the academic skills, but the experiential skills in order to move into employment. And we have some sterling examples from the work that has happened with Purdue Northwest and the mechatronics program, and how they have taken the classroom training and made sure that there's internships involved for all of those students, to the Skill Up initiative, which has occurred in Northwest Indiana, that has, for us, focused on manufacturing and has done the same thing in manufacturing with work and learn strategies. But also, one of those unintended consequences was the fact that a lot of the employers who are in more of the rural settings that actually do not have any college or university or solid training institution available in their communities are now offering the training being taught from, for example, an Ivy Tech community college, but taught at their plant site for incumbent workers from other companies and job seekers, which is pretty phenomenal, and we think is clearly a model. And so I think when we look at last but not least, some of the products that we've been able to deliver on. These have been very long-standing products. Are a work ethics poster, which generated early in the 2000s when we did a survey of over 100 employers and asked them what the skill sets were that were needed of their employees, and they essentially came back with these attributes of work ethics, work readiness. And so instead of just doing a report, we created a poster. That poster has been modified slightly over the last 15 years. Every 3 years we do a survey of employers and they update this. And this is in high school, elementary, middle school, one-stop adult education centers, and in our universities across the board. And our State of the Workforce report, which was the first and still may be the only document like this in Northwest Indiana, which really integrates the economic development, employer, and workforce education components, the data that is out there to really talk about what our workforce is like and where employers can turn for the right individuals in the right industries. And so with that, I guess I will turn this over to Karen, who will talk about what's happening in the Chicago Cook Partnership.
Great. So, quick question. How many of you think about workforce and think of social services? Just raise your hands. I'm also trying to make you wake up. Come on. Let me see it.
Exactly.
All right. How many of you see workforce development as a tool for economic empowerment and growth? Thank you. So, you would not believe the amount of time that we spent in Chicago trying to change that paradigm because so much of the work that was done in workforce development was done in conjunction with human services, social services. And so we spent a lot of time helping to reframe the approach to what workforce development meant and what it meant to our communities and what it means to our employers. So the Chicago Cook Workforce Partnership was born a little over 5 years ago. We were the brainchild of President Tony Preckwinkle, who you saw earlier today, and Mayor Rahm Emanuel. And prior to our existence, if you were an employer in this region and wanted to look for talent through the public workforce system, you could work with the local workforce investment area that was run by the city of Chicago. You could work with Cook County South and West Suburban Workforce Development System, or you could work with Northern Cook County's Workforce Development System. And you could also speak to the policy and strategy arm for the city of Chicago, which was then known as QUIC, the Chicago Workforce Investment Council. Now, I'm sure I just lost you explaining that. Can you imagine what you are as an employer coming into the area looking for talent? So rather than sending our employers to 4 different sources for talent, and rather than forcing all of our delegate agencies to submit RFPs in every single one of those areas in order to actually become service providers, everything was collapsed into one organization. We built an entirely new structure, and we also made sure that there was a focus on local business demand. And before that, there was very much a train and pray philosophy. Train them up, pray they get a job. Job done. And so we really wanted to focus on strategic engagement of employers and strategic engagement when it came to our pipeline, our talent pipeline development. So we have 2 clients in mind, one being job seekers, one being employers. And then we work with them through a variety of tools, so training providers, career coaches and advisors, and then we've built out this entire ecosystem around workforce development. And there's now this robust partnership and robust synergies between what we're actually training people in and the local demand. So we focus on the 7 high-growth, high-demand sectors for this region only. That is what we put our training dollars toward. So I'll tell you a little ditty. When we first started, we did this analysis of the labor market. We looked at, where were the actual jobs, where were the jobs projected to be, what were those sectors, and then what were those key occupations? And we said, all right, that's what we're going to focus our dollars on. Well, so we brought in all the training providers, had this big meeting to explain, this is what we're going to fund. And one of the categories that was actually available for funding was dog grooming. Well, there was a dog groomer in the audience when we made this announcement. And I stepped out of the room. The staff said, "You can't leave the room anymore. There's a dog groomer here, and he's really mad." And he said, "I want you to take another look at those numbers. There's jobs in dog grooming." And I said, "I'm sure you're right, but we're focused on high volume, high growth, high demand." And he says, "I have successfully trained and placed people in dog grooming." We said, "Great. Can you tell us your percentage, right? Can you talk to us about your outcomes?" "I've had 80%. I've got an 80% placement rate." "That's great. 80% of what?" He had placed 13 people in dog grooming jobs in the previous 3 years. That was not the volume or scale that we were looking for. And so we said, listen, the other side of this is about demand. And so if we get Petco to ring the county with 100 new stores and they need 500 dog groomers, we will train for that demand. But you've got to be able to articulate it. The way this story goes is that when we got back to the office, there was a call from the National Dog Grooming Association. But anyway, next slide. So I say all that to say we are all about the demand. So as I mentioned, we were formed about 5 years ago. We are the largest workforce system in the nation. And I know workforce does not sound particularly sexy, but it is exciting and it is rewarding to connect people to their future and connect employers to the talent that they need to grow and compete in this global economy and even regionally. Come back for me just one more. Thank you. So we do our work. We don't do the direct service. We fund 53 workforce development organizations. We operate 10 workforce centers. We have 8 satellite locations, and we do 3 sector-based centers. So 1 in information technology, 1 in healthcare, and as Linda alluded to, 1 in retail and hospitality, and I'll talk about that in just a moment. And so we do this through a competitive bid process, just as you might well imagine, and we work with a host of different partners to make sure that we are meeting the local demand. We serve approximately anywhere from 100 to 140,000 people a year actually come in and visit one of our centers to avail themselves of a host of services. And typically we enroll anywhere from 12 to 19,000 people in direct training services in any given year. You can advance. So here I've just brought samples of a host of different initiatives that we're involved in. Some of the work that we do on the front line involves creating a Where the Jobs report. We do a quarterly retrospective. We identify the top employers for the quarter in the county. We also identify the occupations that they have been seeking people in, the credentials that are necessary, and as well as the skills. And so that tool is used on the front line. We have about 700 people on the front line serving folks on any given day. In addition to that, we have done target occupational profiles. So we give people an overview of what it means to work in a particular career, a particular occupation. And those are tools, again, that are used on the front line. But getting to the larger point around the regional collaboration, before we could even be in a place to collaborate with the Midwest Urban Strategies, we had to do a lot of collaboration and internal work here within our region. And so over the past several years, we've focused on we were launched as a nonprofit organization, so we're not connected to government. We are the designee for the city of Chicago and Cook County. And so as a nonprofit, we have now been able to bring in an additional $50 million in philanthropic funds that has helped us to grow initiatives and bring in partners. And as Earl said, so often, I know early on, we were an afterthought to many partners. Or we were the box that they had to tick off, right, in order to be able to apply for federal funding. And so there was not this, let's consciously bring these folks to the table and let's have these intentional strategies around how we engage with workforce development. And that has completely shifted. And I think because of the work we've done with our local collaborations, we've been able to then do these larger regional collaborations. One of the most significant has been our $10.9 million award from the Walmart Foundation. It's focused on career pathway advancement with respect to the retail and hospitality sectors. Recognizing the fact that 1 in 4 Americans has a job in the retail sector. How many of you started out in retail, your first job? So McDonald's, Burger King, Starbucks, grocery store. we did this exercise with our board members, and it was overwhelming. It was like 98% of the board, their first job was like at McDonald's, right? And so given the way that the economy has recovered and the number of jobs that have started off in retail, despite the fact that you may start at a low-paying job, there's great opportunity to advance quickly and advance to higher-paying wages. And so that grant has actually allowed us to not only advance our own retail and sector center, but to sub-grant now to 10 other workforce boards around the country where we lead a community of practice around retail careers and development. We also focus again on those high demand, high growth areas, so manufacturing and TDL are other areas where we've had great partnerships and great collaborations on a local level, and then specifically focusing on the needs of young people, folks over the age of 50. We've got a great relationship with AARP and the Back to Work 50 Plus from their foundation. We're actually doing a symposium tomorrow around seasoned workers and those folks seeking those encore careers after 50. So I'll stop there and let Ann get back to sort of facilitating and see if we can answer any questions for you all.
I'm going to open, since we're close to running out of time, I'm going to open it up to the audience to ask questions, and then we can come back. Questions? Yes.
You've shared some really great success stories.
Is the microphone for you?
Okay. You've shared great success stories. Thank you. Really impressed. Apart from the obvious one that we all face, resource constraints, what would you say, though, each of you, are maybe the biggest obstacles that you faced, and secondly, and it might be related, the biggest frustration?
Sure. I would say, from my perspective, the greatest challenge was just creating the sea change, the paradigm shift, getting people to think about the fact that it didn't matter how many people you trained up. If there was not a demand for those skills, it was all for naught, right? And so we've really had to create this sea change even amongst our system around business engagement and what does it mean to really engage with employers and industry associations, discerning their needs, building programs that are really aligned specifically with what they're asking for, and being able to project and understand the future. I would say my greatest frustration is around scale, because as large as we are, as big a system as we have, as many people as we serve, as great a placement rate as we have, there are so many people in need. And when I look at the communities in my city, when you listen to the news and I hear, oh, it's 5% unemployment rate, 6% unemployment rate. I know that in communities in the city of Chicago and in suburban Cook County, if I slice demographics by age, by gender, and by race, I get 60% unemployment for African American males in some communities. I get 40% unemployment if you're Latino. And so that to me is the biggest frustration, that no matter what we do, it just isn't enough.
You know, I think our greatest challenge has been one of trust, because we've had such a disparate region with so many different pockets of schools and local elected officials and communities that at one point did not trust each other, always thought that somebody had a hidden agenda if they were reaching out to work with you. Now that has changed tremendously over the last 5 years to be far more collaborative and trusting. And I think still my greatest source of frustration is the fact that we do not have a single large city. I mean, Gary, is one of our major drivers, but we don't have a Chicago or a Milwaukee where folks see that as kind of the center of the universe in our region. And so we also don't have a single media source that we could use to communicate. And both of those things really, contribute to the challenges that maybe others don't face, although we all face numerous challenges.
nice part about going third is you can just say ditto, ditto. But I want to add a couple pieces. So as workforce development boards, we're funders. So I think that's also lost in this conversation. So we are the handlers of these federal job training dollars and other need dollars. And so when there's a reduction on those dollars, we're obviously in a hole right away. And so I think we've all been resourceful enough to find other ways to do what we do or whatever we're responsible for, whatever our mission is that week. And Karen said it best earlier. We have a lot of customers, but really two key customers. Industry, employers, demand, and then, of course, our supply side, the folks we deal with. And so anything we can do from a resource standpoint, whether it's dollars and cents or other collaborative situations, we're going to do whatever we have to do to find a way to serve those two customers at the kind of scale we're trying to achieve. And again, Karen said it best. Our economy is doing great right now, low unemployment, but not in the pockets that we're dealing with. Retention of employment, retention of apprentices, and all those key things. So we're never going to work ourselves out of a job. I can tell you that right now. So if the economy's bad, we're busy. If the economy's really good, we're really busy. So we're always having stuff to do. So which is nice about being at a conference like this, talking to you all, is that as you're driving the engine of economic development and your markets, workforce boards are ready to be a part of it. But I think and I'm going off your question a bit, but I think what happens sometimes is we don't know how to talk to you and you don't know how to talk to us. And so as a publicly anointed workforce board in your area, we could work with you side by side to ensure that those instruments are in place as you are developing a new project or developing a relocation. So think of us as a vehicle and a response to whatever it is that you're trying to develop.
I can take one last question. Anyone? Oops. No?
The one thing I wanted to just piggyback on the point that Earl made, to the extent that you've never had to know what your workforce board does, that you've never had to go personally visit a workforce center, that's a blessing, right? We get people when they are at their absolute lowest, when they feel devalued. When you think about in this country that we tie so much of our own personal worth and value and dignity to work. And so our responsibility is to meet people where they are along the spectrum of preparedness. I tell folks we work with folks who have never worked a day in their lives, who may have a 6th grade education, all the way up to PhDs. We have placed CFOs at local corporations. And so it's easy to be lost, right, because you've not needed us. But we are here. Consider it a blessing you haven't needed us, but we're here, and we're eager to work with you.
And, another point to the whole workforce development arena is that we have not been a very structured system whatsoever across the country, and we've not had the opportunity to actually get degrees in workforce development. So back to the community of practice and why the urban strategies piece is so important to us is because then we are able to once again share with each other, learn from each other as you would in other occupations where you do have that kind of discipline and structure to get you to where you need to be and other folks to turn to in order for you to get advice and support. So moving it back to the urban strategies and why we're here today, that's really critical for us.
So your walkaway notes are two things. No matter where you're located, there's a workforce board in your area. So just know that. We've illustrated 3 right here, Milwaukee, Northern Indiana, and Chicago. Those are 3. But also know that there's a network, the first of its kind of boards coming together, as Linda just described, under community practice and other tangible relationship building situations. So as systems, we're trying to strengthen ourselves and leverage ourselves so that we can do more, because we have to do more, because people are dependent on us to do more. So just those are your walkaways. Locally, you know what we're doing, and you also know there's someone in your area, but collectively, we are really trying to make an impactful design on the system.
I wanted to certainly thank Karen and Linda and Earl. I know what they do. I've worked with all three of them, and they do amazing work. I also want to thank you for your contribution to the changing world of work. And, this collaboration is going to be, I think, record-setting, certainly for your business and for what we do as business owners. So excellent conversation, and thank you again.
Thank you, Ann. Thank you, Kelly. And Tracy.